Great. Well, welcome again. It's great to have you here. Particularly warm welcome again if you're a visitor or a guest. My name's Toby. I'm the vicar here. I had the privilege of being in the same Alpha group as Estelle, and it's wonderful to see you, Estelle, on this particular day. But it's wonderful just generally to be together and to open God's Word together. So we're going to look at a Bible passage in a moment. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about a situation that I've been facing recently, which is that I recently turned 50 years old, which is, I know, extraordinary. Yes, thank you very much. How can he be 50? He's not 50. He must be 20. Anyway, this is an interesting moment to me. So the only thing that I could think of that I really, really, really wanted for my birthday was a new pair of slippers. And my wife, when she heard me say that, said, you really are embracing middle age, aren't you? And I am. I recently got a bird watching app where you can hear what noises the birds are. It's amazing. So I'm really embracing middle age. But often when you hit middle age, you kind of hit this crisis. Many people describe it as a midlife crisis. And then sort of traditionally, stereotypically, people go out and buy a car or something crazy, kind of change things up a little bit. But what I've been noticing recently is a lot of sociologists have talked about this crisis, and it's not just for people who are middle-aged. In fact, this crisis, this insecurity comes on people at all sorts of life stages. And they've also talked recently about a quarter-life crisis. Have you heard about a quarter-life crisis when you're 25? It's a kind of, I don't know how many people, I won't ask you to raise your hand if you're 25, but it's an interesting thing. I was reading in the paper, in the Observer. This is a lady called Juliana who's 25 years old. She was writing an article. She went back to when she was 15, so 10 years previously. She found her diary that she'd written. And in her diary, she'd written all the things that she wanted to achieve by the time she was 25. She opened it again. And it says that she wanted to have these things. Owning a house in Notting Hill, ambitious. Being a successful TV presenter. Being engaged. And owning a pink Audi. Interesting choice. Anyway, so this is what she writes. Flip. That's actually not what she says, but that's what I'm saying. She says, Flip, I am 25 and a half, single, unable to pay my rent, and the closest thing I own to a car is a broken skateboard. I'm in the throes of a quarter-life crisis. It manifests itself to me in wanting to run away, to start again, or bury myself in anything that would distract me from my own reality. The smallest things set me off. An Instagram post announcing a friend's engagement. Finding out a celebrity I fancy is several years younger than me. Monday mornings. Anyone living their best life on a beach. The idea that people are achieving while I flounder fills me with panic. Can anyone identify with those feelings? Clinical psychologist Alex Fowle defines it as a period of insecurity, doubt, and disappointment surrounding your career, relationships, and financial situation. She says, check, check, and check. Has anyone ever felt those insecurities? They're common to so many people in our culture. Maybe you can resonate with what she's experiencing. Because we all feel insecure. Let's just put it out there. Everyone feels insecure. And if you tell me you never feel insecure, you are lying. We all feel insecure at different times. Some of us mask it really well. But it's part of the human condition. The question really is, when we feel insecure, what makes us feel secure? And there are many different places you could go for security. But here are four principal ones I think we look to. First of all, appearance. Many people invest their security in their appearance, what they look like, how they come across, facially, bodily. And in fact, there is a multi-billion-dollar industry focused on making you feel insecure about your own looks and appearance in order that you will buy their product. Many of us feel that we feel insecure, but it's also where we put a lot of value for ourselves. The trouble with appearance is it fades over the years. Let me testify. Over the years, you cannot hold on to it. It's not a great long-term investment. Secondly, affluence, what you own. Now, there's nothing wrong with owning money or owning possessions. They're obviously great to have possessions. It's great to have money. Money brings a certain security, doesn't it, to your life. You can make various choices that people who don't have that money cannot make. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But as your ultimate security, is that really where you want to put all your eggs? Because people can gain money, they can also lose money quickly. I've seen it many times. People who've built businesses that have completely tanked, they've lost everything. And the trouble is, if you connect your self-worth to your net worth, when it goes up, you feel great. When it goes down, you feel terrible. Affluence. Thirdly, achievement. You might not care about possessions or money, but making an impression on the world, that is something you'd like to leave, a legacy. And again, there's nothing wrong with this. We want to do well in your career. You want to get to certain places. You want to hold various records. You want to be able to nail things down and say, I've done this. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But equally, careers can go up and down. You can lose a job as well as gaining a job. And if all your eggs in that basket, when that happens, your self-worth will crumble. And achievement will always be surpassed by someone else. Have you ever had that? You think, I've done this, and then someone else comes along who can do it even better. Lastly, approval. This is probably the most common one, isn't it? Where do you get your security from? The approval of other people, pleasing people. And again, it's a natural human tendency. We want to be liked. Of course we do. But many people will work all their life trying to please someone in their life from their past who's never going to be satisfied with what you do. We can often work trying to earn the approval of people, actually, who were never going to give it. And the problem is, if you base your life on the approval of others, if you live for their approval, you will die by their criticism. You will be so susceptible to criticism that it will absolutely kill you if you receive it. Now, there's nothing wrong with approval or achievement or affluence or appearance. None of these things are wrong in themselves at all. In fact, they're great. But if you invest all your life security in those things, each one of them at one point will fail you. Is there an alternative? Well, the answer is yes. It's what Estelle has been talking about today. The answer is in this Bible passage we're going to look at here. It's about a guy called Zacchaeus. If you'd like to have a little look at it, it is in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 to 10. So if you have a Bible, feel free to read it along with us, but it's also going to come up on the screen. Luke 19, verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he's gone to be the guest of a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Who was this guy, Zacchaeus, in the story? Well, what we know is that he was a tax collector. We also know that he was short, very short. In fact, a tradition has it he was the shortest man in the town that he lived in, Jericho. And actually, the Greek word refers to possibly a condition that he might have had from childhood, which had stunted his growth. So he was particularly short. So when it comes to security and appearance, he had been dealt a really bad hand. He could not look to that as his source of security. So he didn't have appearance. Affluence, he did have. It says right in the first verse, he was a wealthy person. So he's got money on his side. Thirdly, achievements. Well, he was a tax collector. He was not only a tax collector, he was the chief tax collector. So in many ways, he'd done incredibly well. He got to the top of his profession. So he must have felt a certain amount of satisfaction about that. But then the last one, approval, not great. Let me explain why. A tax collector in those times was collecting taxes for the Romans, the occupying force around that area. So the Jewish people had to pay taxes to the Romans. But the Romans wouldn't collect the taxes themselves. They would find Jewish people who'd be willing to be tax collectors themselves. In fact, many Jewish people, to become a tax collector, had to pay a bribe towards the Romans to get the job in the first place. So he is a traitor to the Jewish people because he's taking taxes off them to give to the Romans. Not only that, they would also often take more than the taxes were required from the Romans and put quite a lot in their own back pocket. So he was not only a traitor, but he was corrupt. He was taking people's money that they deserved for himself. So understandably, his approval rating amongst the Jewish people was incredibly low. So he really didn't have much at all on that front. And yet, here he is, this small guy, a tax collector, wealthy, but really lacking in any approval. He probably wouldn't have had any friends at all. Finds himself hearing about this person called Jesus and thinking, I'd love to see him for myself. I'd love to see. Maybe you're in that position. Maybe you think, I've heard about Jesus that Estelle's talked about. I'd love to meet him for myself. This is what Zacchaeus is thinking. I'd love to see him for myself. So what does he do? He runs. This is not what middle-aged, wealthy businessmen in that day and age would do. They would not run. It was only for servants and children who would run. But he ran ahead of the crowd. Such was his desperation to get to the tree. He gets to the tree. He climbs the tree. Again, no self-respecting Middle Eastern businessman would climb a tree. This was for children and servants to do. But he climbs to the tree. He is desperate to see Jesus for himself. And what happens? There's a moment that changes his life forever. And I think it can help us understand where we can find our security. Here are three things I just want to briefly touch on. The first is this. No matter how small you might feel, Jesus notices you. No matter how small you might feel inside, Jesus notices you. Can you imagine how Zacchaeus was feeling, this outcast amongst his own people? Despised, ridiculed. He sits in this tree and he just wants to get a little glimpse of Jesus. But when Jesus gets to his tree, he stops. Can you imagine Zacchaeus' heart beginning to go? What's he doing? And then he looks up and he looks Zacchaeus straight in the face. He's noticed him. He knows that he's there. He has been ignored by most people for most of his life. And here is Jesus looking straight at him. You might feel ignored. You might feel that life has passed you by. God has not forgotten you. Jesus notices you. He knows what's going on in your life right now. You might be in a situation not like Zacchaeus, but maybe you're up a tree financially at the moment. Maybe you're out on a limb in a relationship that's really tricky at the moment. Maybe you're in a hole spiritually and you're thinking no one else knows. God knows. God knows. He knows everything about you. And he always has. He's known you from the very beginning of your life, even before your life. And you are not an accident. This is the claim of the Bible, that you were created by God for a purpose. He loves you, and he's got great plans for you. He's seen your whole life. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows the day that you were born. He knows the day that you'll die. He knows everything about you, and he sees you. I love this idea of the attention that he gives Zacchaeus. Because actually, if you think about it, how do you display love to someone? You give them your full attention. Yesterday, Jill and I had been away for a bit. We got back, we were sort of tidying the house. Jill was sort of talking to me about some various things, and I was also tidying at the same time, trying to multitask. I'm not brilliant at it. And then something popped up on my phone. I started looking at my phone, and Jill said, "Will you stop looking at your phone and look at me when I'm talking to you?" Oh, she had my number. She said, "Stop." I was like, "Yeah, I'm so sorry." She was trying to tell me something really important, and I was just not listening. And then I tried to give her my full attention. When you give someone your full attention, it means you really care about them. My kids, today, Emma is 4. She loves dressing up as a princess. She loves putting on a new tiara every single day. And there's only 3. I mean, it's not that interesting. They're always the same. But she always says, "Look, Daddy, my tiara. Look, Daddy." My son, Barney, loves skateboarding and scooting. They're not allowed to have them in the house, but he's made his own cardboard skateboard. So he does tricks, flips, ollies, all sorts of stuff. He's constantly doing it. He says, "Daddy, look at me. Daddy, look at me. Daddy, look at me." It's so annoying. I mean, I love him, but it is so annoying. Always in the middle of something. And then I do look, and he says, "Oh, no, that wasn't it. Look again, look again." But basically, he wants my attention because he wants to know that I care. And in this moment, the person who's been bypassed by everyone, Jesus looks up and says, "I see you. I see you. I notice you. I love you." And that's the same with him. He sees you. And actually what he does with Zacchaeus is he calls him by his name. He says, "Zacchaeus." They say the sweetest thing is hearing your own name said by someone who loves you. Zacchaeus. God says your name. He knows your name. He cares that much about you. And can you imagine the number of names that Zacchaeus has been called over his life, given his stature? Kids can be cruel at school, can't they? I don't know if you've ever been called things in your life that have stuck with you like a wound that's hard to shake. This is the thing that he's been through. And in this moment, Jesus says, "I've seen you. I know you. You don't have to worry about that anymore." He said, there's a great line in Isaiah where it says, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast?" Of course not. Impossible. He said, "Even though she may, I will not forget you." He says, "I've engraved you on the palms of my hands." I don't know if you've got a tattoo. Lots of people have tattoos. You put a tattoo on because something's really important to you. It's like a saying or a picture or something that is really important. Do you know what? Jesus tattooed you, your name, on his hands when he died on the cross. Those nails were for you because he loves you. And this is the lengths to which he goes. He says, "You're special. You're not mass-produced. You are custom-built. He knows you and he loves you." So no matter how small you might be feeling, Jesus notices you. Secondly, no matter what you've done, Jesus forgives you. No matter what you've done, Jesus forgives you. Do you know what the Zacchaeus means, the name? It means pure one. Pure one. Can you imagine the irony that everyone saw in that? He was the last person who was pure. Everyone would be, "Oh my goodness, did you know what he's called Zacchaeus, and yet he's a traitor and a thief." And Jesus calls him pure one. This is not just, it happens to be his name. I think Jesus is saying something quite important here, which is that even though he feels his past has disqualified him, Jesus sees his potential. You might feel like your past has disqualified you, but Jesus sees your potential. He sees what you could do with him and for him. And Zacchaeus, it's very hard to feel guilty and happy at the same time. Have you noticed that? If you ever feel guilty about something, you've done something, it's very hard to feel completely at peace. This is Zacchaeus in this moment. But then Jesus says to him, no, you are the pure one. I'm calling you pure one. Not because of what he's done, but because what Jesus believes he can be. And interestingly, everyone else in the crowd, when Jesus says, "Come down, I want to go to your house," they are absolutely outraged. They all know who this guy is. How on earth could Jesus not know who this guy is and invite himself to his house? It says, verse 7, all the people saw this and began to mutter, "He's gone to be the guest of a sinner." A sinner. Can you imagine them spitting at the ground? A sinner. The problem is that what they see in him is exactly reflected in themselves. They just haven't seen it because they're sinners too. In fact, we all are. We're all in the same boat. You're a sinner. I'm a sinner. All of us make mistakes. All of us hurt other people. All of us are fundamentally selfish. We all have our own brand of selfishness that comes across in different ways, but all of us, I wish I was a better dad. I wish I was a better husband, a better pastor. I wish I could live up to my own standards, let alone God's standards. We all fall short. And this is what it says in Romans. All have fallen short. You, me. Zacchaeus isn't the only short person here. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. And yet, Jesus sees his potential. In stark contrast to the religious people of the day, Jesus doesn't judge him by his appearance or by his lifestyle. He doesn't accuse him because of his past, but affirms his potential. I heard recently a bit of parenting advice, which was like, treat your kids not how they are behaving, but how you would like them to behave. In other words, don't tell them constantly off for the things they're doing, but help them to aspire to something greater, and then they will hit those targets. And that's really what God does here. Jesus is doing here. He's saying, you know what, you may not have hit the targets, but I believe that you can do more. I believe in you. I love the story that Rick Warren tells of when he went, he's a pastor in the States, and he went to a Californian prison. And it was a maximum security prison. There were 600 prisoners there. They were all sent out into the yard, and he was supposed to address them. And he couldn't get their attention. So he got out a $50 bill, and he just waved it in the air, and he said, does anyone want this $50 bill? Immediately, they all stopped talking. Hands up. He then took the $50 bill, and he scrumpled it up in his hand. He said, does anyone want this $50 bill? Every hand went up. He then took it and he ripped bits off the side of it. He ripped into it. He threw it on the ground. He stomped on it with his foot. He spat on it. And then he picked it up again. He said, does anyone want this $50 bill? Every hand went up. He said to them, many of you, this is what's happened to you in your life. You have been squashed. You've been mistreated. You've been subjugated. You've been squashed and become dirty. And that's how you see yourself, and that's how the world sees you. But did you know that you haven't lost a single cent of your value to God? That's what we see here. It doesn't matter how many times you screwed up, because God sees your value. Your value is unchanged to him. And he wants to set you on a path that is different from where you are at the moment. Thirdly and lastly, no matter what you fear, Jesus has great plans for you. No matter what you fear, Jesus has great plans for you. Can you imagine the fears that gripped Zacchaeus? What happens when I die? What happens when I'm on my own in my old age? There'll be no one to look after me. What fears do you have about the future? We all have them. But Jesus here changes the course of his life in one interaction. And Zacchaeus' response is interesting. It says, verse 6, he says, so he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. In other words, Zacchaeus got down very quickly out of that tree. Can you imagine the excitement that he had that Jesus was coming to his house to have dinner? He got down straight away. He probably got all sorts of, like grazes on his bum as he was coming down. He was desperate to get down there because he'd met this person called Jesus. And everything began to change. And what it says in verse 8 is he stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anyone out of anything, I will pay them back 4 times the amount. In that one moment, he's converted. How do I know? Because he changes. From a lifestyle of taking what was not his, he now begins to give. He spent his whole life trying to build security, and now he's giving his security away because he's found something better that gives so much more meaning and security. He's changed the course of his life. He wants to give. He's thinking, how can I help others and not take? Tradition says that Zacchaeus then became the apostle Matthias, who's mentioned in the New Testament, eventually accompanying Peter on his missionary journeys, and also then being made a bishop by Peter. What a change of career. What a change of trajectory through one encounter with Jesus. And it all starts with this moment where Jesus looks up, Zacchaeus looks down, Jesus says, will you come down? And Zacchaeus says, I'm coming down immediately. And the same challenge really is there for us. There's nothing wrong with where we place our security. But Jesus has got something even better in store for you. So, will you let go of the branch and come down when Jesus invites you? Will you let go of appearance or affluence or achievement or approval, the things that you build your life upon, to let go for something far greater, someone who will never leave you and never forsake you? This is the exciting challenge of the gospel. This is something that Estelle has responded to, and many people in this room have done the same. But maybe today is a chance, as we see that baptism moment of Estelle going under the water, to say, Jesus, I want to recommit. I want to say again, I don't want to put my security anywhere else, only in you. I've been recently quite obsessed by Sam Fender and Olivia Dean. Sorry to admit that. But anyway, there's a line that Olivia Dean says in this song, which says, there's nothing brave in walking alone. Love in exile has nowhere to go. Makes me think of Zacchaeus. There's nothing brave in walking alone. And then this great line, so come on home. That's the invitation Jesus invites all of us to come home to the place where ultimate security is found. He says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice, opens the door, I will come in and eat with them and they with me. Shall we pray? I'd love to encourage you, if you'd like to say a prayer, to talk to Jesus, to respond to him tonight. And maybe you're thinking, you've heard what Estelle said, and you're thinking, I would love that. I'd love to experience what she's experienced. But you can. You can talk to Jesus now, if you'd like to, in your heart. And I'd love to encourage you to maybe echo a prayer. I can pray a prayer, and you can echo it in your heart, just saying to Jesus, I want to start this relationship with you. Equally, maybe you have been a Christian for a while, but you know that your security has wandered from him, and you've been putting it in other places. And tonight is another opportunity to say, Jesus, I want to put my security in you. So I'm just going to pray this prayer, and you can echo it in your heart if you'd like to. Just talk to Jesus. He's alive. He's risen. He's here by his Spirit. And just say this to him now. Lord Jesus, thank you that even though I might feel small, you see me. You notice me. Jesus, thank you that even though I've made all sorts of mistakes, you forgive me. And thank you that even though I have all these fears about the future, you're with me. You'll never leave me. So I want to come down. I want to let go of all the things that I've put my security in. Appearance, money, my achievements, approval of others. I let them go this evening. And I want to come down. I want to be with you. I want to invite you in to my life. Come into my life right now. And be with me forever.